the John Deere Dain experimental tractor. John Deere Company, starting in 1858 with steam-powered tractors, moved on to internal combustion engines. John Deere did not invent the first internal combustion engine-powered tractor. Credit belongs to John Froelich for inventing the first internal combustion-powered tractor. If you missed my video on John Froelich, I put a link down below so you can go see it. After John Froelich's first tractor proved successful, John went on to found the Waterloo Gas Engine Company. Always innovative, John Deere acquired and established a tractor line with the purchase of the assets of the Waterloo Gas Engine Company on March 14, 1918. Prior to this, Deere had spent 6 years experimenting with tractors. March 5, 1912, Deere's first efforts with the Melvin tractor, which was strongly influenced by the Hackney Motor Plow Company, came to an end. The Melvin tractor was a disappointment. Second try, Deere investigated the Slopsky's tractor A2, B2, and D2, which also ended in a disappointment. By 1914, conditions in the infant tractor industry were ominous. Deere turned to Joseph Dain Sr., founder of the Dain Manufacturing Company. Dain Sr. was already working on a farm tractor. He merged his company with Deere & Company in 1911. Dain Sr. continued experimental work on an internal combustion powered farm tractor. By February 13, 1915, Dain had built a functional tractor. Deere remained non-committal toward the tractor business, but approved continued testing of the Dain tractor. December 16, 1915, Joseph Dain Sr. made a full report on the experimental work. 3 Dains had been built. 2 were equipped with friction transmissions, and the third had a gear transmission. The first Dain weighed 3,800 pounds. It obtained a steady drawbar pull of 5,000 pounds in lowest speed and 3,000 pounds under natural conditions in 5-year-old clay sod with 3 14-inch bottom plows. Dain number 2 weighed 4,000 pounds and was tested in heavy black gumbo soil near Winnebago, Minnesota. The third Dain, equipped with a gear drive transmission instead of a worm and gear drive transmission. Dain was impressed by this model and believed it would soon replace friction transmission tractors. This was a major step forward. The original 3 Dains were not without problems. The first drive chains were too light. 2 ratchets broke, and gears in the rear wheels showed excessive overheating, and other minor problems were encountered. Joseph Dain was asked to move his experimental operations to the Marseilles plant in Moline to construct 10 more tractors soon for further testing. June 13, 1916, Dain found his present engine would not work because of a lack of parts. So Dain Sr. switched to the McVickers design engine that would be ready for testing by mid-August. 1916. In the meantime, 4 to 6 Dain tractors were built with Waukesha engines were being readied for shipment in August for continued field testing. Joseph Dain was convinced that farmers would ultimately want and buy all-wheel drive tractors, so he developed a chain drive system that powered all three wheels for the Dain experimental tractor. Dain was both ahead of his time and correct that farmers want all-wheel drive tractors. In fact, today, two-wheel drive tractors are hard to come by. Unfortunate for Deere and farmers alike, Joseph Dain Sr. passed away before he perfected his tractors. Deere only made 100 Dain tractors, and development of all-wheel drive tractors was put on hold for decades. At this point, Deere gave up on developing their own tractor and moved on to acquire a proven tractor manufacturer. They found the perfect one in Waterloo, Iowa. They bought the Waterloo Gas Engine Company and the Waterloo Boy Tractor Manufacturing. This gave John Deere a proven tractor and shot them to the head of sales in internal combustion powered tractors. After this, John Deere became always innovative by buying proven technologies rather than develop them themselves. Now we have come in a complete circle back to John Froelich. Funny how that worked out. You see, John Froelich started the Waterloo Gas Engine Company in Waterloo, Iowa, manufacturing the Waterloo Boy gas engine and the Waterloo Boy tractor. This is a 1/16 scale replica of a John Deere Dain. It is in probably 95% die-cast metal. The chains are plastic on this thing, and everything else, as near as I can tell, is die-cast metal, making this a very, very interesting piece because most die-cast models have a little more plastic than this. But that makes it also a really cool piece. It is Joseph Dain's model. You can see with the chain setup, it is an all-wheel drive model. You can see there's a drive chain coming off the transmission going to the rear and then going up to the front wheel on that side, and the same setup on this side. So, isn't that amazing? All-wheel drive vehicles back in the day. Now, of course, it's a three-wheeler instead of a four-wheeler, which we found later is a much better design. But in the early days, they were working on three-wheel designs because they thought that would work. I'm not sure where they got that, but that's all right. It has this here lever, which raises and lowers the drawbar. And then there's some little notches for it. It has a crank here, which is the transmission, as you can see. Forward, neutral, and reverse right there. Pretty nice. John Deere logo. And these here are decals. They are not tampos. They are decals. And it also says John Deere Moline, Illinois logo on the side. Now, if you remember, this is an old model, so that is an old logo. The flywheel does rotate, as do all three wheels. Now, it doesn't roll that great because sometimes steel wheels don't roll that great, but they all do roll. The chains, though, do not. Underneath, you can see there would be part of the crank and part of the gears for that. You see the tires roll, and they roll well. They also have a steering front axle. You can see that. However, if you're not careful, that tie rod will actually catch up with the chains, so you got to be careful how it is. It also has a slight oscillation, not a whole lot of oscillation to that front axle. Probably the real one didn't oscillate very much either. On the front, instead of the grill, you can see it has an engraving here for the John Deere Aftermarket 2000 in Nashville. It's for a show for all the stuff for aftermarket. People make the difference. They also released this model one other way, and it had a sticker here. There was no engraving. It just had a sticker that showed off the actual grill. Crank on the front is metal, and you can see it rotates. Turn, you can see the grills. They did a great job replicating the real Dain. Up top, radiator cap, fuel tank right there. Overall,
really not a whole lot of detail on this model because most of the workings were under hood panels, so they didn't have to put a whole lot of detail in. But it's still a really nice model and something you don't see too often. It's got a metal seat just like the real ones. I'm assuming this is probably the clutch and brake system for the tractor, and steering wheel. You can see back here, it's probably not the most stable thing when you get on other ground because wide in the front, narrow in the back. Later on in tractors, we went the other way, wide in the back and narrow in the front because we found that was better. But John Deere, when this thing was being made, nobody knew what a tractor should look like. So they were just testing out any theory they had. Experimentals in this era were just, some of them were just absolutely crazy. Some of them looked like traction tractors from the steam traction days. They copied those big clunky things. And then you had this one, which was much smaller, a little more refined, smaller wheels, tires, and gears. And ultimately, the smaller, more compact did take over in designs, and the big monsters just kind of went by the wayside that looked like steam engines but had internal combustion power. Because, well, we are good at coming up with lots and lots of designs in the early stages of an industry and then just discarding the ones that are not practical, too big, or just not economically viable, or bottom line, just don't do the job as efficiently as other designs. And that's how we've got to where we are today, where pretty much all the tractors look about the same. They all do the same job. They're roughly the same dimensions, etc. But back when this thing was being made, nobody had a clue as to what a tractor should be. There's only been a handful of experimentals put out, so Deere was being way ahead of its time, and then they were smart when they bought Waterloo Boy and scrapped their own project. Just buy a tractor that works. But overall, this is a really nice die-cast model of a very rare real tractor. You could call it an experimental, but you could also call it a production because they did actually make 100 of them and sell them, and these were available for farmers. So I don't know whether I'd call it a true experimental or a production tractor. I'd still probably lean to experimental because the project was scrapped with hardly any of them actually being sold. But at the same time, more of these got in the hands of farmers than any of the other true experimentals out there. So we'll leave it up to you. That is the 1/16 scale John Deere Dain model in die-cast metal. It is a really, really nice model. And I just got to ask, what do you guys think of it? Drop it down in the comments below what you think of this model.
Do you have a replica of a Dain or any other experimental tractor in your collection? I've got the Melvin and the B2 that I plan to do a video on, and maybe even an experimental from Minneapolis Moline. You want to see those videos? Go on and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. I'm Logan, the 64 the Gear Jammer Skeele, and I'll be back soon with another toy and video.